Daria, let's go to our next guest. Bruce Torres is the Director of Communications for the American Small Business League. Bruce, welcome to the program.
Why, thank you. How are you?
Doing great. Like a lot of Americans, I have a very soft spot in my heart for small business, and I work a lot with small businesses. And when you hear the politicians talk, small business is right up there with home, mother, and apple pie. But in practice, are we really helping our small businesses from Washington?
No, not at all. Despite the confetti and the balloons and the press releases and the factory tours, to the contrary, it's a sad reality. We need to know about a giant fraud and scandal and scam like we need a hole in the head. But the reality is, small businesses are on their own when it comes to any help from the federal government under any administration going back decades.
Whether we're talking about Republicans or Democrats, there seems to be no real understanding of the challenges small businesses face. I work with a lot of small businesses in New York, and when a regulation is passed, if you are General Motors, you can certainly have your army of lawyers and accountants deal with it. But the impact on a small business can be devastating. Some of them just say, I'll do whatever you want, but just tell me how to do it. Why is there such a blindness on the plight of small businesses?
Corporate capture, in a nutshell, and it's also at the state level. I'm going to assume at the local level. Our focus is on the federal level, but we've seen enough on the state to know it's consistent. Our real expertise is the issue of the federal contracts that are supposed to go to small
Mhm.
businesses, as you know. But your question is, why is there such a blind spot? Why is it
Right.
so hard? The decades of momentum of that corporate capture. One has to remember Eisenhower's farewell address, where he warned about the military-industrial complex, and the fact that earlier in 1953 is when Congress passed the Small Business Act that
Mhm.
created the Small Business Administration that had a few major provisions, one of which was a fair portion of federal contracts must go to small businesses. And in the decades since, the bottom line is what we have found for decades is that although every year they say, oh, yeah, 23 or more percent of federal contracts went to small businesses, we have found, and so have dozens of congressional investigations, that the lion's share, we see as much as 97% of all federal contract dollars go to the 1/10 of 1% of businesses that are big businesses. We need to know we are a small business nation. 99.9% of all of our businesses are small businesses by the government's too large definition of up to 500 employees. We say the cutoff ought to be up to 100 employees because
Yeah.
98% of all businesses in America have less than 100 employees, but almost the entire federal budget goes to giant corporations. And through fraud, loopholes, bad policies, lax oversight by the SBA, they stamp and say, hey, we're doing a great job. How about a loan? They want you to think about loans. They really do not want us to know that small businesses can and should find what contracts are supposed to go to small businesses and easily find how to apply for them.
When we look at the defense industry, as you had mentioned, with, say, subcontractors that are small, set asides that are supposed to go to small businesses, we often find that it's not only percentage wise, but the lowest level of work. It's not the innovative part of the contract that goes to small businesses. Do you find that it's almost impossible today for small businesses to compete, in particular in the defense sector, with the big boys on the blocks?
Yes, and not only for the reason you just highlighted, but for all the reasons in the decades of momentum that have locked the relationships in place and have created the apparatus that prevents small businesses from easily knowing that there are contracts I could apply for. How do I, where do I find those contracts? How do I
Yeah.
find out how to apply? Remind me the question if I've gotten off track, please.
No, you're hitting it. I live in the Northern Virginia area. I deal with a lot of individuals that are trying to do business with the government. And when you're a small contractor, you find that they can be, I don't know if this is a legal term or not, but sleazy. There's no other way to put it. They will use
Mhm.
small businesses to the detriment of the small business.
Oh, sure. And then there's also companies that, small businesses that they buy, I guess, when they have a contract. I know they do that. And there's also other levels of subterfuge. But then there's big institutional habits that allow this to happen. The bottom line and the point for the conversation is how do we get Congress to look at the malfeasance and the shoddiness of the reality that the SBA really is a front and a cover for. How do we do that? We've got some ideas, we've got a couple of websites, blah, blah, blah. But the opportunity is this. The big businesses who get all the federal contracts, in essence, basically create no net new jobs. Small businesses are the job creator of the United States. And if they got the 23% of federal contracts that they're supposed to every year, that would create around 2 million jobs on top of the average 1.5 million, 2 million jobs that America typically creates. It would be an economic boom of huge proportions. The Small Business Act was intended to be something of an economic stimulus. No new taxes, no new spending, deficit neutral. It's not partisan. It's not Republican. It's not Democrat. It's not conservative. It's not liberal. It's just Main Street and regular America getting ripped off once again by the theatrical show called the federal government that pretends to care about regular people but is in the pocket of big business.
Now, Bruce, given that we have the internet and all types of web conferencing and everything, it makes it very easy today versus when we were growing up to work remotely. So shouldn't that actually help small business? And shouldn't that actually mean that the government could deal with more small businesses? Is that happening?
Well, it'd be fun to explore all the benefits to small businesses of being able to work remotely, how it, would let the federal government or the different agencies interact with small businesses would be fine to explore or think about once we've dug ourselves out of the hole of how better the agencies want practically nothing to do with small businesses and how
Mhm.
the SBA is helping that avoidance and also charade of where those contracts go to. Working remotely reminds me of the conversation about AI. Can that be good for small businesses? Can that be bad for small businesses? Um, Quite obviously, many people reflect that AI is helping businesses do with less and less human beings. Now, does that bolster consumer confidence because that's a huge driver of the economy? But so is job creation. So if it's off balance, and it's eliminating jobs month by month, year by year with AI, and man, that's predicted to speed up. That's another factor that's going to squeeze the economy, if not small businesses, out of existence. Because right now we're seeing most of the market growth is in the hands of, I think, 7 AI companies. And there's a lot of speculation like, hey, folks, this looks just like the dot-com bubble of about
Yeah.
25 years ago. So, yeehaw, it's a casino economy with institutionalized gambling. And we've got a long way to go before we have an economy based on a real economy based on production and tariffs that could actually help that because we're years away from replacing the manufacturing we have lost and the goods that we have to buy from overseas. And like I say, the axis of our wheel, ASBL.com, is to learn about, hey, I want small businesses to get small business contracts. Dear Representative, dear Senator, can we make that happen, please?
When the federal government or a state government or a local government wants to impose a new burden on businesses, whether it be whatever frame of government, they have no problem sending out an email or sending out a letter saying you must do this from now on. But it seems when it comes to contacting those small businesses about opportunities, they're not so much eager to stay in touch with those businesses. When I was somewhat wet behind the ears, just out of law school, trying to assist some small businesses, I said, well, you have a lot of opportunities. All you have to do is pick up the Federal Register and take a look. And this very grizzled old business fellow said to me, Sonny, I get here at 5 in the morning. I leave about 7 at night. Do you really think I have time to read the Federal Register? What can the government do to expedite the knowledge or the opportunities that small businesses have?
Uh, with the wave of a magic wand, they could audit and see the situation at the SBA and make sure that small business contracts go to small businesses. That's what the government could do.
Yeah,
What you and I can do is have precious conversations like this. At our website, don'tcheatwomen.com, there's a resource page where we've pulled together the public links that teach anybody how to find small business contracts that could be available to small businesses and how to apply for them. And I warn people it's a muddle and a fuddle. You start clicking into it and you do get lost because it's not a clean this, that, and the other thing education. These are the industries, these are the contracts one could bid for. Here's how to do it. It's that ought to, if the government really served small businesses, that would be clean, it would be elegant, it would be methodical, and it would be abundant. It would be the first thing you hear or see when you go to sba.gov. And
yeah.
it's really, obviously, it's in our hands. Like, what can we, the people, do to raise the alarm about this?
I see a lot of young people where I teach at a university saying that they can't go into small business. They might want to do gig work for themselves, but they don't want to start their own company for the simple reason, exactly what you said. It is so complicated. The amount of time they would spend just trying to file paperwork to do it would make it impossible to start a business. Do you think that we're going to see fewer small businesses start in the future than we're seeing exist today?
Well, I'm really fascinated by what you just said because that's a nice report from the field, so to speak, the minds of young people. I have the impression, memory, right or wrong, that startups have been kind of growing for the last couple of years. So as hard as it is, look how badly the human or American impulse is. I want to be my own boss. I want to have my own company. You ask if I think it's going to get any easier or any harder. The smart money is going to say small businesses are going to face just tighter and tighter nooses around their neck and have many things continue to squeeze them out of existence. Exhibit A, what we did in the name of the pandemic, how that demonstrably, unnecessarily stood on the face of small businesses for a very, very long period of time before those quote unquote restrictions were lifted. While I think trillions were given to giant corporations,
Right.
and then the illegal, unconstitutional behavioral mandates: stay home, don't shop, you can't shop at these stores, but the big box stores are open, and of course, online commerce. And you think of that in conjunction with the AI, everything to help us never leave our homes, to shop online, all the e-commerce, and you see the boarded up storefronts in town after town, city after city, still after COVID. Now, I don't think things are trending well for small businesses at all, but I don't give up hope of what could happen when enough people know and care and do things for what they want.
We're seeing the tariffs go across the board. It seems like every country now. Do you think that's going to help small businesses? I did notice something. I do own a small company, and I noticed I'm getting a lot more ads saying that they're reducing their prices a little bit, which is allowing me to buy the things that I need domestically today. Do you think that small businesses are trying to now step up and grab back that business that was going overseas? Do you think tariffs are a good thing for us?
Well, what you just told me is almost the first, real life, kind of report. And you're seeing the tariffs as kind of influencing that kind of improvement in that kind of a situation, which is nice. Maybe things are turning around. What I've seen tracking for months and months is small business caution. because of the volatility, the unknown of what are things going to cost. Orders were kind of slow, expansion, investment all year, very, very slow because of the little roller coaster ride of the tariffs. Generally, in principle, tariffs can be a great thing if they're coordinated with investment in internal improvements, infrastructure, and if there's credit made available for productive uses. Those elements, and this is wonderful, are the elements of good old Alexander Hamilton's American system of economics. People should study and learn what that is. Where can you go to find that out? There's an author named Anton Chaitkin, Chaitkin, .substack.com, who has written for decades about the power of Hamilton's economic program. And he shows that throughout history, where presidents implemented it, that's where we boomed. And where bankers and financiers in favor of free trade, now globalism, pushed that aside, we depressed and wealth was extracted up to the very, very wealthy.
Something you said really struck home when you mentioned the pandemic and the effect on small businesses. Um, One of my contacts is a fellow who owns a chain of 99-cent stores in Bronx, New York. And during the pandemic, he said, they told me that I'm not an essential business. He goes, I feed my family, I feed me, and I feed my employees. Why am I not essential? The arrogance of the federal government in saying that Target can open up, but the guy who owns two or three 99-cent stores in poorer communities in New York, he's not essential. By what criteria does this reveal perhaps the real mindset of the federal government that they simply don't see small business as essential to the country?
Well, yes, but also worse, the arrogance, the tyranny, really. And it sounds like the fascism that it is. My understanding of fascism is as it as it was for Benito Mussolini, fascist dictator of Italy in the 1920s. He said, if you didn't call it fascism, you might as well call it corporatism,
Mhm.
because it is only the merger of corporate and state power. It doesn't mean brutality. It doesn't mean jackboots. It doesn't mean invading other countries. Fascism is the merger of corporate and government uh, power. A great historian, Jim Marrs, said in Nazi Germany, the government took over the corporations, the state took over the corporations. In modern America, corporations have taken over the state. The result is the same. And I got to be frank, when one really researches these things, you get into things that uneducated people or uninformed people consider conspiracy theories. You see the same money emanating out of the City of London and Wall Street, who created not only the Nazi Party and helped fund the German war effort through World War II. You see it banking and financing the Bolsheviks, and also back channeling, supporting the Soviet Union through the height of the Cold War. There were trucks supplying the North Vietnamese, helping kill American soldiers in Vietnam, made by forces funded in factories aided and abetted by Ford in the Soviet Union. To many people, myself included, it's all a big game by people really at the top behind the scenes that are really, really sick psychopaths who are implementing a modern version of the brutality of the worst empire, colonial extraction, brutality, and slave making that we rebelled against in the 1770s.
Bruce, I'm wondering when I look at young people today that want to get involved in small businesses, is there any information or are you aware of demographics? Do we see, for instance, more urban youth going into small business? Is this more educated college white boys and girls going in? Are there any sort of dynamics going on that show there's some trends involved in the future of small business?
I don't know, but I wish I had a couple clones because that's an area I would love to, really dig into and roll up my sleeves. The best it triggers in me is to describe how many smart, brilliant young people have developed their own entrepreneurial endeavors. I know of a young man who makes six figures for a couple of years right now, working out of the house, buying and selling high-end sneakers. He flies all over the country to make these deals. Sometimes he doesn't even leave the airport, and he's developed this. He started on eBay, etc. So that's my response to that.
It's great. I wonder to what extent you never see in a campaign after a token statement, we love small business, we want to encourage small business. I have seen no politician from either party actually have a platform of actually helping small business. Um, how do you change that?
By relentlessly bringing it up, by having the courage to have these kind of conversations, because what we talk about, we start to picture what we picture, we start to want. And then also the other challenge, to be brief, is to encourage each other to overcome the feeling you can't fight City Hall. Might as well crack a beer, put your feet up, and binge watch a show on Netflix.
One of the things that I very much approve of the Trump administration has done is to reduce the extent of regulations. They have a deal where for every new regulation, they have to reduce three more. Is our economy and our federal contracting geared to people who have an army of lawyers and accountants at their side? And doesn't that really screw small businesses right to the wall?
Yes, and yes. That's who it's geared for. That's who can survive the regulations. I'm watching out of the side of my eye all the time. Mamdani in New York. And if the state passes a tax to raise corporate to fund his plans, the way it's going to hurt small businesses, but the big businesses have those lawyers, et cetera. They have that kind of help.
Exactly right. Bruce, it has been a fascinating conversation. Tell our viewers how they can keep in touch with the American Small Business League.
ASBL.com and check out don'tcheatwomen.com.
Fantastic. Bruce, I hope we have a chance to speak again.
I'd love that.
Take care now.
You too.